horrors of the pandemic? Well, brilliant British scientists, politicians taking some clever decisions, but it was the military, wasn't it? It was the British military that actually got those vaccines, got them there, and got them into the arms of our wonderful NHS. We were talking earlier about border issues as well. Who is it we turn to when the border force decide they don't want to work? Again, we turn to our armed forces. We put them in position. And again, if you want something done, it seems, ask a soldier. So we should rightly remember Armed Forces Week, and specifically Armed Forces Weekend or Armed Forces Day tomorrow. And here with details of it, somebody who needs no persuasion because he served in it to laud the work of the Armed Forces is the relevant Minister, James Heappey, who joins me now. Good to have you on, Minister. For listeners, this is a relatively new development. I think it's a little over 10 years old, isn't it? Just give some of the background and what it is you seek to celebrate. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Nick. And, what a great introduction. It's
thank you.
You realise that, over the last few years, it's not just all the stuff they've done overseas, and there are literally hundreds of things they've been doing overseas. At home, they've been very much in the spotlight too. Once upon a time, the only day on which we really reflected on the service of our armed forces was Remembrance Sunday. And of course, Remembrance Sunday is about acknowledging the death of those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah, and injuries, of course, as well, Minister, those who get injured in line of war as well.
Well, exactly, but it's very specifically a very sombre act of commemoration. Armed Forces Day, 6 months the other side, is an opportunity to celebrate the service of our armed forces. Yes, there are acts of remembrance done at each Armed Forces Day parade, but really what Saturday is about is an opportunity to celebrate the people who serve now, have served in the past, and all the amazing work that they do for our country. And, as you noted in your introduction, our communities more locally too.
What specifically takes place tomorrow, Minister?
Well, in places all across the country, and it really has caught on. I know that within my own constituency, there are 3 or 4 Armed Forces Day celebrations. Most towns will muster a parade of veterans and cadets and reservists who serve in the community. They will hoist the flag. Most towns do a fete or an exhibition of the work of the armed forces. And it's just a great way for, people of all ages to go and find out more about the work of our armed forces and the service that they give to our nation. The focal point is in Falmouth, down in Cornwall. That's the national celebration. There, things are a little bit more formal, a bigger parade, the Red Arrows, lots of bigwigs. But fundamentally, whether it be in your local town or in Falmouth, the national celebration, tomorrow is an opportunity to go along and to celebrate the work of our armed forces. And if you see somebody in uniform, thank them for their service.
I think that's a bloody good idea. Reminding my listeners, you rose to the rank of Major. You served in Kabul, you served in Northern Ireland, you served in Basra. If one of your children or a niece or nephew was to say to you, Dad or Uncle, shall I go in the Army, Air Force, Navy, what would you say?
Well, my son is 11, and he does from time to time ask me and say that he might like to follow in my footsteps. It makes me enormously proud. I cannot imagine a better career for a young person to pursue than a service in our nation's armed forces.
What do you remember specifically from your times, Minister, of service, military service?
Incredible camaraderie, variety of jobs. When I first commissioned, my regiment was in London doing all of the kind of stamping in time outside royal palaces.
I could handle that bit I could handle. Yeah, that's easy. Put me down for that.
But within a year, I had transitioned to training for my first Afghanistan tour. That was then followed by a year in Northern Ireland, 6 months in Iraq, another 6 months in Afghanistan. So I remember it being very busy. I remember it being dangerous. There are too many of my friends who are walking around without their limbs now. But actually, whilst of course I stop and think about those who didn't come home, and I'm endlessly reminded when I see my friends who are on prosthetics of the price that they paid, I remember a time that was amazing. I made friends that I will hold on to for life. I saw the world. I challenged myself. I had the great honor of commanding young men and women from my community, and it's the most extraordinary career, and people should always consider it. There's no greater thing, I think, than to serve your country in that way.
Final question. It's I'm not going to. It's not fair. I'm not going to ask you about the economy. I'm not going to ask you about inflation. I'm not going to ask you about mortgages. But I am going to ask you about something that does knock on your door. What has NATO lost out on by not getting Ben Wallace as its new Secretary General?
Oh. One of life's good ones. Ben is Ben has led defence for the last 3.5 years in the most remarkable way. As you noted in your introduction, there's been huge demands placed upon us. The speed of transformation in the battle space is such that there are endless demands to spend money on the old stuff, the kind of tanks, ships, planes that used to define the battle space, but there's pressure to spend all the money on the new stuff that will define the battle space. It takes real leadership to reconcile those competing demands. It takes real leadership to reconcile the demands of our responsibilities overseas with the responsibilities at home. Ben would have been a fantastic Secretary General. The race isn't entirely over yet, but I think, as you say, that it's clear that it may not be Ben at this stage. The only upside is that our nation, of course, gets to continue having him as our Secretary of State for Defence, which is a pretty good thing.
Final point, Minister. If, as is reported, it's not taking place because of the reaction from our closest ally, the US, and Joe Biden, how surprised are you by that?
I don't want to get into whys and wherefores. All I know is that this is a time when the alliance is under a huge challenge. There is a war in Europe.
That's why we need the best bloke for the job, isn't it?
Well, look, it's definitely the alliance is going to need a very strong person to take it forward. I would have thought that Ben would have been exactly the right person to do so, but the alliance relies on consensus, and we need to see who now emerges as the choice of the alliance.
Good to have you on the show, sir. A day of mixed emotions, I imagine, for you tomorrow. Huge pride, but of course some memories of wealth, some colleagues that you serve with. Thanks for your time. James Heappey is Armed Forces Minister. Looking forward to today. Well, it's a whole week, of course. It's Armed Forces Week, but specifically the big event, as the Minister rightly says, points you to Falmouth in Cornwall. Around 100,000 people on their way from the whole country. So have a very successful day. And I love that idea. If you see someone in military uniform, service personnel in military uniform,